Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, it's a belt. So this belt here is a belt that's from a friend of mine, and she asked for some help with it. So let me get over here on the workbench, and I'll show you what we've got going on here and how we're going to address that. I appreciate you taking time to be with me in the shop today. So here's what we've got. We've got a brass, or maybe it's brass plated buckle here. And this handmade belt's got all of these little flowers, and then someone used a knife to cut in what looks like vine work to those flowers or stems. And the issue with the belt is it's no longer long enough. And so how do we address this? This belt here is to the wearer looks like about a 30 or 31 inch belt. And we need one that's probably about 5 inches longer. Now, last year I had a video of one, and it was another lady, and it was her father's state patrolman's belt, and I extended it. So I'm going to do kind of the same process here. I kind of got started here already, realized I wasn't recording, but this had snaps on it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave these two parts here. And the reason why I'm leaving these two is when I extend this, I'm going to add all the new leather on this side over here. The idea behind that is when it's on the buckle again, it's going to be probably about like that when this tongue comes around here through there, it'll cover up most of this here. It may not cover up these two spots. We're going to leave those. It'll look like someone added some accent spots there. So the first I need to do is to remove the hardware here on this. And I could cut this off, but I want to keep as much of the original leather as possible. And well, I got the other one really good, but this one, I need to see if I can cut this. Get this out here. There we go. Now this belt, when it was made, it was skived down on this last bit here. So this thickness here is 10 ounce. So that's not a bad weight for a belt. That's on the lower end of where I go. I typically want to go between a 10 and a 12 ounce layer. And I'm going to end up probably with a little bit thicker than normal belt than I usually do. So I'll probably be more like a 13. I'm going to add about 3 ounces to the back of this leather here. Now, this area was skived down, so it's only, it's just less than 6 ounces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of leather that is, this one here is 1 5/8 inches wide. I'll cut a strip of leather. We're going to overcut the size a little bit, so I'm going to go with a strip of leather that's about 1 3/4 inches, and then the additional leather here. So instead of trying to do a lot of this math, what we need to end up with is a strip that's 10 inches longer than the wearer's size, 6 ounces. So let me go cut a piece of leather and we'll come back to here. Okay, so I've got my supplies here now. So this is the original belt. I cut a piece of raw Vegtan. I'm going to potentially add a little bit of dye to this, but I thought I'd see how it looks after I get some oil on it. This leather is about 11 ounce piece of leather. And then this is some pre-dyed, this will be my liner, leather that I got from Montana Leather. So I can set this aside. The first thing I need to do is to get this piece of leather set so that I can attach it here. And I want this transition to be as smooth as possible. Obviously, if I put that on there, then I'm going to end up with some really thick leather there, and then by the time I put the liner on there, it's going to be too much. So what I'm going to do is, since this is 10 ounce and this is 6 ounce, I'm going to skive down the end of this to 4 ounces to make that transition. And I've marked here a little bit extra. So let me go over here on my splitter and we'll split down this end here. All right. Let's see what we've got here. These two layers together. 10 ounce. Good. So the next thing I need to do is this piece here. It's going to go on there like this. I'm going to skive down this a little bit to make this a more gentle approach to there. I thought about squaring it off, but I'm going to keep as much of this original leather as I can. The other thing I need to do is to skive down the end of this, because this is a taper here as well. So I guess I need to get this cut to length. Okay. So I'm just going to get this feathered down here, this last bit. Some old leather. I should have added, if you add a little moisture, sometimes it's easier to skive this, but we'll get through it. All right, that's down to a feather edge. Okay. So that makes a nice transition there and a nice transition here. It's over this other area here. So what I need to do now is mark where I'm going to put my contact adhesive for this transition. Okay. Now we'll add some contact adhesive here. I want to stay inside my line. Okay. We're going to go up to this skive area here on the bend over part of the belt. And I use the Weldwood contact adhesive typically. So that's what this is. And I like to put 2 coats on, letting the first one soak in and set up there. It has contact adhesive on both sides. So I'm going to line up here on my pencil mark. Looks like we're in good shape there. It's got initials here. I'm not sure if that's who the belt belonged to, DW, or if that's who made the belt. Let's tap this in place now. Good. So let's see how close I am. 10 ounces there. 10 ounces there. 10 ounces there. Awesome. All right, the next thing I want to do is to line up and put the liner on here. And these are a little bit of a bump there, but I don't think they'll really pose any issues there. So let me set up and we'll put contact adhesive on all of this now. All right, so here we are. This is the continuation of the old belt here. And here is the liner, and I'm going to adhere the 2 of these together using contact adhesive. And the only thing I want to do is make sure I don't get a bunch of contact adhesive in these holes, even though I will re-punch those because I have to get through this one, but I don't want you know, some sticky contact adhesive in there. So I'll just be careful around that. So as I'm working here, it kind of gives me a correlation between how I got started in this whole leather craft thing. And I know some of you heard the story before, but I had hardware and I wanted a new belt made for it. And the cost that I was quoted, I thought was high. It was probably a fair price. But anyway, so I get it. When I have people that have an old belt like this that means something to them, and I understand where that comes from. So I enjoy trying to help bring, you know, an item back into a useful life. And that's what we're doing here, is that. So I'm going to go ahead and get contact adhesive applied here on both of these strips, letting it set up between times. And then when we're ready to laminate the two surfaces together, I'll come back and I'll show you that process. The one thing that I need to decide is whether I'm going to sew along the edges or not. The contact adhesive really should hold fine without sewing along the edges, but I do like that added layer of security. And so if I can get permission to do that, then I'll add that along there. And I've got some you know, brown thread, so I don't think it would be, you know, overly obtrusive to have that on there. So like I said, when I get ready to laminate these together, then I'll get right back to you. All right, so it's all prepared, and I forgot and had to go back and do it afterwards. I skived down the last 4 inches here where the bend over is going to be, so it wasn't too thick there. That would have been a lot of leather to have folded over there. It'd be awkward. So the next thing I need to do now is to laminate these 2 layers together. And so I'll start here on this end where the bend over goes. And I typically put a little bit of a pre-bend in here where the buckle goes. So I'll tip that up. It helps to eliminate the wrinkling that would happen here when you fold it over. And now I'll just work my way down the belt here. So I talked to my friend on this, and I think she had told me before, but she wants it to stay as original as possible. So I'm not going to introduce any stitching to the front of it. There wasn't any there to begin with. So this project's going to go fairly quickly, which there's nothing wrong with that. You guys like a shorter video from time to time. And the contact adhesive, if you have any doubts, try to pull apart 2 pieces of leather once the contact adhesive has been put on there. It's not coming apart. I'll just gently tap it down, especially along the sides. The old belt was curved a little bit on the back side, so I'm trying to make sure I got really good contact there. Really worried about the edges. I'm going to trim this after I get this other part done. I'll use a long straight edge on that. So I'm going to measure here and put my finished length on here. So I'll just measure down here to the other end. We're just going to mirror that same round over on this end. A little finish sanding. Just using the Ron's number 2 edger. We'll round this top and bottom here, and the number 2 kind of matches the edge of the other belt, or the old belt. We'll do the same for all of the back. I'm leaving that front alone. I want to keep as much of the original leather the way it was when I started. I'm making really good progress. Let's find out what size holes these are. I'll start a little bit small, I think. Yeah. And I matched up the hole size in the old one with my punch, and now I'm punching in the holes here for the tongue. We're getting there. Our holes are made here. Now let's create the same size hole. It looks like that's about a 1 inch. So what I do is I come in 3.5 inches here to create the fold over. And then I want to find the approximate middle and create a set of parallel lines. This works really good for me for lining up my bag punch on. I changed my mind. A little bit thicker leather, and I thought maybe a 1 1/4 would be better here. There's plenty of leather. So let me line it up here on my marks. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Well, I think that's going to look good. It had 2 snaps. We're going to put 2 Chicago screws in here, and it doesn't have a keeper on it. And with this style buckle, you really don't have to have a keeper because the back side of this center bar buckle does that. So let's put those in, and you know, they're about 1 inch apart. Let me look and see here. Yeah, I'm going to keep that same look. So I'm going to put them here and here. And then let me make sure they're centered. Now we'll make the other holes here. Okay. Now, the next step, we talked about oil in this. So I'm going to oil both parts of the leather, and then we'll let that hang and rest, and we'll do the next step. So let me get the oil out. So I'm just going to put a coat of boiled linseed oil on here. It'll darken it some, but a lot of that darkness will go away once it soaks in. So I'm going to go ahead and finish oiling this front and back. And once the oil's had a chance to soak in, I'm going to come back and decide how I want to address the new leather I put on the face of it to get it closer in color. And I may just go ahead and put a little bit of dye on there. I've got the golden brown, I think, is pretty close to that color. So I'm going to hang this up here in the shop and let this oil soak in, and I'll come back when we're ready for the next step. All right, so I think we're looking pretty good here. We've got the other leather attached, edges rounded. I haven't burnished them yet. I'm going to wait until I get this done. And I've decided I need to add some color to this. And the golden brown might be a little dark, but I think it'll look better than that unfinished natural Vegtan. So I've got a little bit here and a wool dauber here, and we'll put a little bit on here. My experience is it'll lighten up some when it dries. All right, we'll let this dry a little bit here and come back and see what kind of color we've got here. I think it'll come pretty close. I know it's dark now, but it should lighten up some here. Here we are. We're just about finished with the project. There's the lining leather. I've got a burnish on the edges. I think it came out pretty good. Hard to get the right angle here to see the sheen. I'm going to put tan coat on the front of this belt. That will allow the owner to oil this if they ever needed to. But I'm going to use Resin on the back, and that'll help cut down on the chance of getting color transfer to clothes. So I'm going to start with the front here. There's someone going to say they don't think that looks good. But we're going to take a belt that was no longer usable and make it usable. And in the past, I've also taken old belts and made handles for a purse or a tote or such. But we talked at length about this, and the persons, they really wanted to be able to return this belt to use. So I'm going to let this tan coat dry a bit, and then I'll be back and we'll put the Resling on and then the hardware. Well, here we go. I think we're looking pretty good. Is the leather an exact match? No, it's probably a little darker, but I think it's pretty close. So let's go ahead and mount the buckle. Now, the snaps were nickel. I normally wouldn't put nickel hardware or fasteners with a brass buckle, but that's what it was before. So I'm going to return it back just like it was. And I got to get the buckle on there the right way. So I'm going to use some Chicago screws if some adjustments need to happen in the future. Those are easy enough to undo. I do put clear fingernail polish on the threads to help lock them in place. Okay, it should fit fine. We haven't changed the width. Oh yeah. Let's turn the camera around here. A little bit better lighting here. That's one of the things I got to work on in my shop is better lighting. So here's a look at the belt. I think it's really a cool looking belt. Happy they'll do the work to bring it back into service. And as I said, we've got our two snaps here, the old snap heads. We talked about taking them out. I could still cut them out if I needed to, but we thought just leave that there. Well, there you go. I think it's a workable solution to a problem of a belt that doesn't fit anymore. I've done this a couple of times, and people seem to be happy with it. I'm sentimental about belts and different things such as that, so I understand where that comes from, but now this belt can be put back into operation. I appreciate you taking time to be with me in the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe, but more importantly, I hope you have a great day.